Okay. So, what's happening?
Um, Not too much. I'm, yeah, I've been meditating about an hour a day, sometimes an hour and a half. Um, that's going pretty well. Uh,
Okay.
yeah, I'm doing some trying to be aware during the day. The mindfulness bell, I'm using that. So things are going pretty well. Um, I tried for fun, just I was at a really kind of good level of concentration a couple days ago, and I started doing something that I'd heard in the past about kind of investigating to see if to see the kind of feeling of the self and to see kind of where it felt like.
All
Uh,
right.
and what I noticed was that I only really felt it when I had thoughts, like noticeable thoughts, and then it seemed to kind of go away when I didn't. Because I had heard of someone like basically looking over all over his body and realizing there wasn't really a self there. But my observation was more just this thing with the thoughts. I viewed my concept of self came whenever I had thoughts. And then when the thoughts went away, it kind of dropped away also. That's kind of how it felt anyway.
That's quite possibly true, but it depends upon what kind of thoughts.
So
Whether
there
there are.
was there were self-referential thoughts. So it was
Mhm.
me explaining something that was often like snippets of conversations, or even just the thought of having a snippet of a conversation, or like thinking, oh, maybe I should tell someone about this, or that kind of thing.
Mhm. Exactly. Um, you have probably heard of the French philosopher Descartes,
Mm-hmm.
who said, "I think, therefore I am."
Yeah.
But he did not quite understand correctly. A better thing for him to have put in his book for quotations is, "I think, therefore I think I am."
Uh-huh.
That's really what's going on, which is what you are, in fact, are saying that you're beginning to understand.
Mm-hmm.
That, but there is something underlying that is not really the self. It's just old, deep programming that is referred to as the self-preservation instinct. So, with that self-preservation instinct, plus the thought I am, is really about all there is to it.
Mm-hmm.
And it almost always is associated with suffering.
Uh-huh. I don't know whether this is accurate or not, but it seemed that it was most strongly tied to kind of verbal thoughts more than other thoughts.
Okay?
I don't know if there's anything to that, but it was a very strong. That seemed to be like, well, maybe that's just most of the thoughts I have. But anyway, that's what I noticed, to the point where it almost felt like, if someone didn't have language, they wouldn't have quite as strong a sense of self or something. I don't know whether that's coherent or not.
All right. How about this possibility? And that is that I am telling stories about myself to myself.
Okay.
All right? What do you think about that? I am telling stories to myself about myself.
Yeah. Yeah, but that seems like that would require language to do that, right?
Okay?
So it seems like if you didn't have language, maybe your sense of self wouldn't be quite as strong.
Aha, perhaps not.
Hmm.
That in
Yeah.
fact you could go so far as to look at that dogs are tend to not be selfish, except something immediate, like about food and sex. Other than that, they're quite uh, friendly, I guess is the way to say it.
Mm-hmm.
Food, sex, and territory, which are very, very instinctual. So, yes, but with humans, we have a whole new layer of stuff that it would be very much like two things. One is the language within which we tell our stories, and
Mm-hmm.
then the collection of stories. Now,
Uh-huh.
if we use language to describe what's in the sensual world, then we're accurate as best we can be. But
Mm-hmm.
um, while it's normally understood that there are five senses, the sixth sense being the mind, most people, when they hear about that, they kind of get the idea that, oh, it is something wonderful and marvelous that needs to be discovered or something. But another way of looking at it is, oh no, this mind, which is a sense, actually just manufactures these stories that we tell ourselves, and in the process, it keeps us out of the here now.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the ways that we can become more present is by recognizing that we're telling ourselves these stories and that we can stop, that we can in fact use the mind to direct the thoughts to the things that are happening right now rather than stories, telling ourselves stories.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what we mean by living in the sensual world, which is actually, in a way, living in reality.
Mm-hmm.
And we call it Be Here Now. Ram Dass has a book by that name. This present moment is what Eckhart Tolle said, and the Buddha actually called himself that, the Tathagata, the one who is here now. All right, Tatata means this present moment, and it really has a lot to do with being in the senses.
Mm-hmm.
Now, normally what happens is that we're in the sensual world and we'll have a consciousness of something in the sensual world, and then we'll process it into a story,
Mm-hmm.
and then we'll store the story.
Mm-hmm.
That's what normally happens, so that when we bring back that moment, we only bring back the story about that moment and not the moment itself.
Uh-huh.
And so this is actually, if you think of it like that, that's actually the curse of being human, is that we're not allowing ourselves to be present, to be in the here now.
Mm-hmm.
And not only that, but many of the stories that we tell ourselves, we don't even like. We don't like that story.
Yeah.
That if we're going to if we're going to tell ourselves stories about ourselves, why not tell some good stories and feel good about the stories? But mostly we tell ourselves bad stories and then wind up feeling victimized, angry, upset. And if you think about it from the let us say this the somewhat strange, but not so strange, intense way that the United States is operating right now, it's been doing that all along. In fact, what it's doing now, it did even more intensely from about 1850 to about 1870 and kind of got some of it out of their systems. Well, it's festered into a big blister again. I wonder how this one's going to pop. But in any case, what we're talking about is these stories about my group, my tribe, my way of looking at the world is better than theirs. And we've got to make sure that we maintain our story. All right. And so that gives rise into all of that fear and greed and anxiety and tension. And it's all about the stories that a guy will tell himself after he's heard that story on Fox News or CNN.
Mm-hmm.
Depends upon what. But that's the way that things are right now, and that each individual one would be much happier if they spent much more time in the here now rather than in storyland, especially the stories we don't like.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I'm using the word story for just past memories because how they're stored is actually in story form.
Okay.
And we have feelings associated with them. And so come in, stay out of the past,
Mm-hmm.
which means to stay out of this storyland. Or we can start to make up new stories that we call the future.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so it's better to stay both out of the past and out of the future. What's very much left then is a big, wide, wonderful world of the here now, which is based on a cause effect relationship that is so sophisticated and so complex because so many causes are affecting so many effects so quickly that we're actually living in a storm of reality.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, very few people know that because they don't experience it sensually because they're too busy telling themselves stories that they don't like. And then not watching the feelings they have about the stories that they don't like. And so they work themselves up. All right. But the reality of the situation is that the story is not true, and neither are any of the participants, especially the big magical one, me.
Mm-hmm.
Because when the experience is of the here now, then the experience is of being part of a vast everything. And being part of that vastness, we lose ourself into it, that there is no real self there except in the stories.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is the real key to the Dhamma, which you have just stumbled across. And all I can do is expand it for you or tell you all about it, but you've got to discover that for yourself, that who you are the stories you tell yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think, in fact, at one time that we had gone through the five aggregates, you and
Yeah.
I together. And in the five aggregates, the actual way that the mind functions, we can see, in fact, there is no self. No self
Mm-hmm.
anywhere in the five aggregates, not in the body. The feelings themselves are not me. Why? Because I have no control of the feelings until they become known. And once they become known, but normally they're not known. Why? Because they're part of the story.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to kind of learn in some ways to separate the feelings we have about the story from the story itself.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the long, slow process. The easier and better way is to stop telling the stories and stop having the feelings that come with those stories.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can experience and work with the feelings that we have in this present moment. Like the feelings we would have, whatever they are, if a child slips and falls right in front of us.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So now we can deal with those feelings because those feelings are current and present rather than remembered and brought up out of the storage system of the stories that we're telling ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. Funny how that word story is so related to the word store, like I used it in the sense of storage.
Mm-hmm.
So the stories are actually stored, and we store them in the mind or sometimes in a book.
Okay.
So now that you're beginning to recognize that aside from the story, there really is no self in there, just human. And that being human is just being in the process of let us say processing the way that humans process,
Mm-hmm.
with the choice of are we going to do it ignorantly or are we going to do it wisely.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. So this is that first fetter that you're beginning to recognize that you are not what you have been thinking of yourself all of this time, that you now recognize that you're nothing more than the stories that you've been telling yourself.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I'm just getting the glimpse of something really that
Hmm.
maybe will become a little bit more clear.
It will. You keep looking. You keep recognizing that. You keep watching these stories and saying, okay, let's stop that story and be here now and watch that selfishness and that self disappear.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. So do you think it would be a helpful practice to during the day if I notice? Yeah, so if I notice it's happening during the day, if I just try to his
Let us do
objective
this.
be
Let us say it this way and then
okay.
continue.
All right.
Whenever the bell goes off or whenever your timer rings, that's the time to recognize that you should now come out of your storytelling, that you're in it right now.
I'm trying something new with the timer.
Okay.
So I have it going off about once every 20 minutes. And whenever it goes off, I just kind of review how mindful I was in the past 20 minutes. Obviously, if I'm mindful at that moment when it goes off, but also how well, where I've succeeded and where I haven't succeeded in the last 20 minutes. I've just been doing this for a couple days, but I'm just kind of playing around with it right now.
Okay. So you can incorporate that with the storytelling. Since
Mm-hmm.
the alarm just last went off, how many stories have I told myself?
Yeah. Yeah. I like it because it's me continually reviewing. And then
Mhm.
whenever, if I get kind of feels like I'm about to get caught in something, I remember, oh, I'm going to have to review in 10 minutes to evaluate how well I did in this chunk. So I'll just kind of let that one alone for now. I don't know.
That's exactly the way you're practicing exactly correctly. Excellent. That's the right way to go. That's good. Always coming back to the here now. And you can do a bit of review with that.
Yeah.
But then you wind up in this present moment.
Oh, I should say maybe one day last week I was really good with the hands, which is my bane, the bane of my existence, hand awareness. But no, I'm joking, of course. But it was I was very good on the hand awareness. I feel like maybe I'm starting to get the hang of it slowly.
Yes. And the hang of it is the enjoyment of being here now.
Mm-hmm.
The enjoyment of the fact that you've got a physical body and here it is, and that we can enjoy that. But the
Also,
only trick is we've got to stop telling ourselves the stories that we have gotten in the habit of telling ourselves so that we can actually be with this present body, with these present feelings.
Yeah, so I still find myself sometimes, I guess. So when you say stories, for me, it's usually in the form of interactions with other people. So
Yes. Uh-huh.
kind of maybe simulating a conversation that hasn't had happened or repeating a conversation that has happened. That kind of thing seems to be the most common for
Very
me.
common,
Okay.
precisely.
Yeah, so if I notice
And so don't
myself,
have conversations with people in your head because
yeah,
that requires you to be a you in that scene. So you
yeah, okay,
create the you for the story.
okay. So if I notice an impulse to do that, I should just drop that impulse and not act on it, basically.
Take a deep breath and say, "Ha ha! I caught you."
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny those conversations are all very of the same theme. They're what you would call conceit, basically.
hmm
Yeah. Yeah, so I
That
guess
that
overall,
yeah. Let me tell me a story, thinking that I'm telling it to you because I'm thinking of you,
yeah,
whereas actually a story about me,
yeah,
for the development of
that's very
me.
true. I find it's often the stories are like me explaining some concept to somebody else, which is like obviously some form of conceit, but like it feels good to be in that position, I guess. But it's funny the kind of themes that my stories take.
That's interesting because the topic matter, whether it would be Dhamma or let us say some bioengineering, you can review that data without having the story of a me and a you in it.
No, I know. It doesn't feel as good though, does it? Yeah. Yeah, no, it's funny that the themes seem very consistent. Um, yeah. Yeah, so I feel like I'm starting to get the hang of it more. Um, yeah, I've got a pretty big deadline in a couple weeks, and my goal is to still not let it affect my practice like as much as it did last time because I had a big deadline about a month ago,
hmm
but I have another round of them, so I'm gonna try to keep up my practice during that. Although I'm kind of happy that my practice got derailed because it allowed me to see how beneficial it was while I had it. So I guess, but now that I see that, I don't need to rerun the experiment.
Right? You can now have the determination that you're going to continue your practice of being um, happy and joyful, and that whenever any anxieties or tensions that come up about that deadline, you can see those as just tensions and anxieties rather than as items on a to do list.
Mm-hmm.
Because normally, when those tensions and anxieties come up about deadlines, we'll then say, "Oh, I'm feeling this. That means there must be something that's undone. Let me figure out what's undone. Oh, I can remember what's undone. Let me go do that." Thinking
Mm-hmm.
that if I go do that, it'll make me feel better.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So your job now for this deadline will be you can feel good and watch the tensions and anxieties as tensions and anxieties, not as marching orders.
Mm-hmm.
That you'll get the project done and you can do it without giving yourself emotional traumas over it.
Yeah. Yeah.
No emotional traumas at all, let alone having it destroy your practice.
Yeah.
And in fact, this becomes the practice. No
Mm-hmm.
anxiety. Deadlines are not an anxiety producing mechanism.
Yeah. Yeah. No, so but overall, I guess my practice is going really well now that I reflect on it. I feel so I've basically made 30 minutes of every meditation sit. Well, I'm shooting for doing it 90 minutes a day. I don't always do that. But when I wake up early enough, in other words, I'm not working late, I I do that, and I try to make 30 minutes just kind of just straight up vipassana. It's just sort
Mm-hmm.
of dependent origination, or like I said before, kind of just looking and seeing the self, this kind of thing. And so this is fun for me because I've not really done this kind of exploration before. And I feel like now my mind is usually pretty settled. If it's not settled, I don't even really bother with it. But most of the time it is. And I spent a while trying to determine whether I felt like my hand was a part of me. I spent like 45 minutes.
What
Yeah.
did you come up with? That the hand is part of the body, but is not a part of me?
I wouldn't say that. I would say that. I mean, I know that that's the answer. I won't say that I have conclusively convinced myself that it's not part of me, but I convinced myself that it's no different from my face in the sense of facial sensations, and that it's no different in as far as basically any sensation. So I guess, yeah, it can't possibly be a part of me, logically speaking, but it's not as intuitive that that's the case as maybe it will eventually become. I mean, it
Mm-hmm.
clearly can't be, but yeah, I mean, I've only done this kind of experiment once, just because I just was kind of curious about it. But yeah, it's
Well,
fun.
they're still there. You can do it again. you,
Yeah,
there they are.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Anyway, so I'm starting to kind of just play around with this a bit, which I'm enjoying, just kind of doing that a bit. And
Excellent.
yeah,
You're moving right along. Yeah, taking a glimpse of, oh, wait a minute, there really is not a self, is there? So you keep working in that direction, as well as with this deadline coming up, watch for anxiety coming.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I would say the last deadline actually gave me a lot of stuff to work with. That was actually, even though my meditation practice kind of fell through, it was actually really good to see the kind of stress arising and passing. That seems to be the name of the game. A lot of this things coming and going, like a lot of
Anicca Vata Sankara Upatavaya Domino. Anicca, everything's changing, right? Rising and falling and rising and falling and up and down. Yes, exactly so. Good to
what
start seeing these patterns. That's called wisdom.
what's striking is how discrete things are, how discrete thoughts are, in the sense of like I would have thought that, if you're depressed about X, it's kind of always lingering there in the background, but that isn't really the case. It seems like it's just these instances, and then it's not there, You can kind of almost pinpoint when it's not there anymore. And then we just kind of like conceptualize it like, oh, I had a really good day, or I had a really, but all it was is you had enough of things of those that you conceptualize until you kind of like smoothed it out into something more coherent than it, or more substantial than it really was. I don't know.
Another way of saying it is we start making up stories about it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess my practice is going really well, actually.
Very good, very good.
Yeah. These things are getting more clear, I think. Well, they're becoming apparent, I think.
Yes. So continue with your practice. Keep on with it. Keep with those hands, keep with that moment. Make sure every time. In fact, you might even, in fact, based upon this talk that we've had today, whenever the alarm goes off, go through a checklist. Anxiety, you know. In fact, there's a joke about it. There was a Catholic priest and a Jewish rabbi that were on an airplane together, sitting side by side, having a little bit of chat about a religion, when all of a sudden a huge amount of turbulence went off. And the plane went whoop like that. And everybody starts to freak out, but the Catholic priest notices that the Jewish rabbi goes like that. Let me show
Mm-hmm.
you. Like this, the sign
Yeah.
of the cross. And the preacher says, "Oh, my goodness, was it that big an event?" And the Jewish said, and he says, "Well, you did a you did a sign of the cross, which means you converted to Catholicism." And the Jew said, oh no, I was just checking. I was just checking a list of things." And the priest says, "What?" And the Jew says, "Yes, yes, yes, yes. Spectacles, testicles, watch, and wallet."
Nice.
He was just checking to make sure everything was there. Okay, so when the alarm goes off, your little check is anxiety or other feelings. What stories have I been telling myself? What are my hands doing? How's my breathing? And how is this present moment? Oh, it's nice. So those would be about 6 things that you can put on that little list
Mm-hmm.
of things to do whenever the alarm goes off. Check for anxiety, check for storytelling, and you can just make a little checklist for yourself of things that need to be looked at.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you check and all that one hadn't happened for a while. I'm going to take it off the list, and meanwhile I'm going to put something new on the list. So I'm not going to make a hard list for you. You can do that for yourself, but you can do
Yeah.
it based upon the things that we've been talking about here.
What do you think about? Well, I should just try it rather than mention it. But what do you think about the possibility of using touching as the alarm itself? So every time I touch something, I go through a list or something like that.
That's a little more complicated. You might be up to that level. But yes, every time there's an event would be
Mm-hmm.
a time for reminding you for mindfulness to bring
Mm-hmm.
sati back up over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever tools that you can that will bring that on, so that you can be here now almost all the time, free from stories.
Yeah. I'm trying when I just walk places, I'm trying to have some degree of awareness of my feet. Just I don't know.
But feet are part of the body. Be aware of walking. Be aware
Yeah.
of leg movements and the body movements and how is your hands doing, and walking is a really excellent way of being in this present moment. You can see people running into things when they're not in the present moment. And so everybody is a little bit in this present moment by walking.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. And I'm trying when I remember to do it during conversations, although that one's still difficult.
That one's the most difficult at all.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny how we're wired to get drawn away by conversations.
Yes, the human brain is wired just like that. That's part of the circuitry.
In in a few weeks, I'm scheduled to do I think it's a 4-day retreat. Um, I've already paid for it, but I don't know if I can actually do it because of this stupid deadline. But hopefully, I'll be far enough along that I'll be able to. Um, so it's just like a
If you do
four.
the retreat, do the retreat. Don't go to do the retreat and then do the project while you're trying to do the retreat.
No,
Make
no,
sure.
yeah, exactly. So basically, I'm basically gonna work weekends until then, so that I'll hopefully not have to worry about it at that point. That's what the goal is. But I told my boss I don't know how thrilled he is because it's the second time. I've only done a couple retreats before, but it's the second time that I did it at a not opportune time. But I didn't. To be fair, I didn't know about the deadline beforehand. But yeah, I'm excited because I feel like I'm in a place that I can make. It's a good time for me. I think to just kind of sit down for a few days and just meditate. I feel like.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, to sit down and watch the flood.
Yeah. Oh, I told you that I started organizing a kind of group here in Atlanta that meets and talks
Yes,
about.
how's that going?
It's going very well. So they're normally, well, there have been three of us, but then um, I got like four people from work who have gotten into it also, meditating.
Okay.
So they've joined now. So,
If
and
any
I
one of
feel,
them want, if they want, you can tell them about Skype like you've been doing. And
yeah,
if
I
any of
mentioned
them
it.
want to, I have some time.
Yeah. Well, one of them I think is interested. Well, he's mentioned it a couple of times. He's the one who's been doing it the longest. I mentioned that I might go to Mexico to visit, and so he's a friend from Mexico, but he's in my lab too. But yeah, I'll bring that up again. Honestly, I feel like I'm not. Yeah, so there is one guy who's been meditating for about a decade or so, but he can't always make it. And so after him, I'm probably the furthest along person, and I don't feel advanced enough to really. I can describe what I've gone through, but I don't really have the perspective. I feel like sometimes too. So, but we just kind of discuss, and it's always good to have somebody to talk about stuff with because you know some
You
people
can
they'll tell.
discuss with the Four Noble Truths because that's the place to begin, it's the place to stay, and it's the place to wind up.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, right now it's just kind of people go around and they talk about their practice, and most of them are doing like the mind illuminated stuff, and they're at lower levels stages than me, so I can kind of give them some pointers. But yeah, we should probably talk about you know not directly meditation stuff, but more kind of general stuff too.
Yeah, good, good.
But yeah, but that's going good. That's going well.
Yes,
So
as you know, meditation is not something in and of itself. Meditation is to get the mind fit for work so that we can put it to work to clean house.
yeah.
And a lot of people don't understand that.
Well, a lot of people are resistant, I think, to the idea because a lot of people who come to meditation, it's with a much more narrow scope of relieving stress.
Right. That's it. That's it. I can't think of a more Duke on the road, all right. Elimination of stress,
Yeah,
precisely.
but I mean
But
in a more limited way. Yeah.
okay, but here's the point that I was about to make with it is that they think that it's going to be the meditation that does that.
Hmm.
That meditation is going to relieve the stress. That's the shortcut that doesn't really exist. And I see a lot of people like that. They think that, and in fact, putting in the hours, just like you would put in the hours of a business. You work, by the hour. Everybody's an hourly employee. So
Hmm.
they do meditation on an hourly basis with an hourly paycheck of the reduction of suffering is the paycheck that they get. And there's no causal relationship. Like at work, you have a business deal with the company that's based upon a set of laws and practices and procedures and all of that built in that so when you go to work you have an arrangement for a certain paycheck and then you do the work and you get the paycheck. That relationship does not exist between meditation and the reduction or elimination of suffering. There has to be a link between those two.
Yeah.
And what is that link? We use meditation to get the mind fit for the Four Noble Truths, and it's through the Four Noble Truths that we reduce and eliminate suffering.
Yeah.
That's really, really clear in so many different suttas.
Hmm. Yeah. I think that a lot of people, including myself, are initially resistant to talk about the Four Noble Truths or anything outside of direct meditation because it seems religious.
But it's not.
I
That's
know
the
it.
whole
I
point.
know
The
it's
Four
not.
Noble Truths is not religious.
I know
It's
it's.
anti-religion. It destroys religion. It
Yeah, but
destroys, in fact, all of the magic, including the magic that people think that they're going to get some value out of meditation.
yeah, what I find is that
That's
if I
magical thinking.
if I talk to people about how meditation has helped me focus, they're very receptive to that. But if I mention anything about the possibility of awakening or anything like that, they think it's, oh, bullshit alarm kind of thing, and then they kind of shut it out.
Okay, well, don't use awakening then, because the Buddha didn't. That's not a word that he used. A better word, which is actually common, would be the word happiness.
Okay.
There's actually a place in the suttas to where the actually here's the sutta. The sutta is that the Buddha is out camping out and he's roughing it. And some
Yeah.
layman that he doesn't know comes by and starts questioning the Buddha who's out there in the woods roughing it.
Hmm.
And with questions like, well, wouldn't you be happier in a room? And the Buddha says, no, I'm happy with or without a room, that the
Hmm.
room is optional. Okay. So shelter and all of that is independent of happiness. So this is, and the only point that I'm making here is that that's a major quality of the teaching of Buddha, just like the word nibbana, though nibbana is often misunderstood. Please don't use that word on any of these people, or they will flip out with religion.
Yeah.
But in fact, if you can use the word that the word nibbana actually means, is cool,
Hmm.
to be cool, to be relaxed. So you could actually use that word, relaxation and happiness. Wouldn't you prefer to be relaxed all the time? Why be uptight?
Yeah.
So that would be the word that you would use with the Four Noble Truths, because the Four Noble Truths is to help us to see the unrelaxed, the dukkha, and come to a state of relaxation.
Yeah.
So those two words, relaxed and happy. In the Pali and in the Thai language, we have a word called sukha. Sukha is actually the opposite of dukkha.
Hmm.
And the best word we have would be satisfactory and unsatisfactory. That
Hmm.
things are satisfactory, things are good, they're acceptable.
Yeah.
And yet, most of the people who want to practice meditation do so because they find their life unsatisfactory, or at least parts of their life unsatisfactory.
Do you find that some people are do you find that the people who are most drawn toward the Dharma and maybe make most progress on the path initially started off with more dukkha than other people?
There are indications that in some cases in Thai Watts, that the Wat is the craziest place in town. All the crazies wind up going to the Wat. That's not always true, but it does happen. Yes, crazy people are drawn to Watts in Thailand, just like crazy people are drawn to churches in the U.S.
Okay.
So there is
Maybe
there is
maybe
that, and when I use the word crazy, I'm talking about people who suffer a lot.
okay, yeah. No, I just
Crazy with the heat of their own mind. That's what crazy is people who suffer a lot.
yeah,
So that's why you would want to use that intermediate point is uh, because meditation itself um, is hard to get dedicated to without a frame of reference.
yeah.
So so you can say that in fact the Four Noble Truths is the frame of reference. It's the overall frame of reference And that's in fact very much supported by the Buddha. Says he only teaches one thing, and that's dukkha nirodha.
Mm-hmm.
So, in fact, that teaching is more important than meditation, and there are a lot of stories in the sutras to where people either don't seem to have been meditating in the way that the sutta would say that they're meditating, but they pick up what the Buddha says, or so that means that whatever past practices they have, we have to sort of guess at. And one of the possibilities is no meditation at all, and yet they get it. They pick it up. They can understand it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So some people can get the Dhamma without ever meditating. To where look at how many people in the West are meditating now and not getting it.
Mm-hmm.
That's because they're making this mistake. They think that the meditation itself is going to do something for them, just like working at an organization is going to get a paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? To where that second example, as I said before, there are causal relationships. So that as you work, everyone else knows it, and you wind up obvious and clear, and you get a paycheck. If you don't get a paycheck, you can go to an organization that from state agency, and they will come and do an investigation about payroll. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's a whole lot of stuff. None of that exists in this relationship between doing meditation and the reduction and elimination of stress.
Mm-hmm.
That it actually requires the students to practice something, to gain a skill. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So here's where it begins to fit in place then. And that is that the very things that they need to do to practice meditation correctly are actually aspects of the Eightfold Noble Path. The Buddha's already got them listed. And so those are the four things. If you're going to be teaching anything, teach these four things. Sati, to remember. The second one is right effort, to come back, to make sure that you're coming back to the breath. Whenever the mind wanders away from the breath, come back and start again. Do so joyfully. Have the right attitude about it. You do those four things then, and you're already helping the people with the Eightfold Noble Path.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. That in fact, without the Eightfold Noble Path, without the Four Noble Truths, they would never will learn anything about real meditation. Whatever they're doing, they'll call meditation, but it's not. Not unless they have sati, right mindfulness, right effort, right view, and right attitude.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And by the way, that's what you're developing still. That's what your practice is, even now. It's just at a deeper level than in the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. So that's something that you can help if you think about this. That's the story that can be taught.
Mm-hmm.
Is the story of the the Eightfold Noble Path as uh, the actual way to practice meditation.
Mm-hmm.
And so the first job or the first major knowledge along the way, the first step then is when the student knows that no matter how obstructed the mind is, no matter how much storytelling we tell ourselves, we can come out of that and see what's going on right now. To come out of our fantasy world into reality
Mm-hmm.
with these four little things. And we do that over and over and over again until we recognize, oh, I'm developing a skill now.
Yeah.
Hmm. So that's the way that you could teach. And that would be very beneficial for all of the people, even the guy with 10 years.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, like I feel just a little uncomfortable teaching without having more experience, but I can.
Okay, but you have at least 10 minutes experience, therefore you can do at least 10 minutes of teaching.
That's true.
Don't compare yourself to me, just like I don't compare myself to Bhikkhu Buddhadasa. That's not an effective way. But I will tell you the story, and I'll tell you in the way that I felt it, and that is that he did kick me into it. He
Mm-hmm.
set me up.
Mm-hmm.
He set me up to teach the Four Noble Truths while he and Achan Po and a whole bunch of other Thai monks and a whole bunch of Westerners were there to audition my first Dhamma talk.
Okay.
Without any warning at all, he said, "Do it."
How'd it go?
Here it is.
Yeah.
And so that's the way to start talking. Yeah, speak of the Four Noble Truths. Speak of it in the sense of how they're going to get value out of meditation.
Yeah.
That
Yeah. I
is
mean,
not going to happen automatically. They've got to go through this process of developing and training the mind.
hmm
That only takes 10 seconds to tell them that.
Yeah, I've mentioned the bell to them and how helpful it's been to me. And I did mention because somebody was saying that they've noticed that since they started meditating, they're less stressed during the day, but that they didn't feel that they were making that much progress on the cushion. And I said, I thought that what happens during the day is 100 times more important than what happens on the cushion. And if they're having any kind of progress during the day, that's they know that they're making some kind of progress in a pretty fundamental way.
Hmm.
But
That's exactly the right approach. Encourage people, just like I encourage you.
mhm. Yeah, actually, I mean, I talk to people a lot about because I've started changing my perspective about various things, and I've talked to people a lot about these kind of like I don't know mundane insights I've had into various things. Um, so I'm used to talking about it, but just not as like an expert. I usually just talk about it like, oh, I realize this now, and then I talk to people about it, and then we kind of just shoot the shit about it a little bit. So I do that a lot. So I guess that kind of
Okay.
is my own form of Dharma talks, but it's pretty casual.
All right. Well, that the place to get started then is to talk about suffering and no suffering, or what is happiness. Would you rather be free from stress and happy? If you do, then that's what the whole teaching of the Buddha is about. Not about anything that's religious. The
Yeah,
Buddha was anti-religion,
yeah,
and
yeah.
that the
No,
Four
it's
Noble Truths actually is the first thing is these four aspects of the Eightfold Noble Path: right view, right intention, right mindfulness, and right effort. Especially that right effort, that joyful, happy, okay, I can do this.
yeah. No, that's become very clear to me how important that is. Um, yeah, I've started viewing just like when stuff goes bad. Like today, so I'm on this deadline and I have to get all these things run. So I had to submit these things to a supercomputer in order to do all this stuff so that I can actually analyze the data before I can write what I have to write about it because I don't even know what it says yet. But the everything it just crashed, and the first thought I had instead of being like, you know, fuck, that wasn't. Instead, the first thought was more like, oh, this is a little obstacle I can try to beat, and it was just kind of like a different mentality of it, which was like when I realized that was the my reaction to it, I was pretty happy because that's a pretty fundamental rewiring of how I'm dealing with obstacles. So that was
Yes,
pretty cool.
excellent, excellent. So that's the kind of thing that you can share also with people is that change of attitude from it
Yeah,
being hard, difficult, stressful, into, oh, we can do this.
yeah,
We can do that again. A clear example, by the way, and this probably still happens from time to time, though most software is designed to help that with the autosave features. But imagine that you're just typing along, and whatever you're doing, you're just typing and typing and typing, and all you're thinking, and you're just getting so much work done, and the computer crashes.
Yes, this happened to me a few weeks ago, right before my last deadline.
And the thought comes, oh no, I have lost all of my work.
Yeah,
But the reality is, oh no, this gives me a new opportunity to go back and redo it and rethink it.
yeah. I've this has happened to me enough times that I've found that I'll spend 10 minutes trying to recover it, and then I'll stop, and then I'll just immediately redo it, and I can usually redo it in 30 minutes.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
If it took us an hour to do it, we can do it again in 15 minutes or so.
exactly. Yeah,
If we, yes, exactly. So no big deal. Not only that, but the 15-minute job was probably superior to the hour-long project.
yeah. I mean, you already
Uh,
solved the problem, so
Exactly. You saw
yeah,
that. Now you understand what I'm getting at. Exactly. So
yeah,
that's real learning. But it takes an attitude change
yeah,
so that we can enjoy that 15 minutes rather than suffering through it because of the worry over the loss of the hour.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Besides, I view like if you have an obstacle, it gives you an opportunity to train yourself. That if you didn't have that obstacle, you wouldn't have that opportunity to. So it's kind
Right.
of like,
To prove yourself you're a champion once again, that you're not a victim to that obstacle.
yeah, to strengthen that.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, stuff's
Exactly.
going good.
Yeah. Yeah. So these are insights that you can share also with the others.
Yeah, I mean, right now, I think we're only meeting like once every couple months or something. But I'd like to, if we get a little bigger, we could do more regular meetings. Um, maybe every couple weeks or something like that. That would be cool.
Excellent. Excellent. What time a day do you meet?
It's really, it's really kind of so it'd be like this last time it was about 6 p.m. my time. So yeah. Yeah, so normally I call you at 11 my time, 10 or 11 my time. So
Hmm.
pretty early.
Yes. I was thinking that we might, in fact, wind up with perhaps a group call
Yeah,
so that
that would be
people could.
cool.
Yeah, we can do that. Let's think about doing that in the future sometime.
No, I mean I mentioned you to them. They thought it was cool. But the thing is, I think people are intimidated though because I've mentioned you to a couple people, and I feel like they think they don't know enough to interact with you. When I told them that's not true at all, but I think that people get intimidated by,
The only requirement is basic English.
yeah, yeah, that's what I tell them. But you know, um, would it be worth me on? I don't really do. So Reddit has a Mind Illuminated subreddit that's very active. I haven't posted there in a long time. But would it be worth putting if you're interested in? Because I feel like those are better than average students in the sense that they're all pretty rigorous meditators.
Yes,
Would that?
that would be good. Wh- um, if you do, write a little bit of a blurb of several lines, including saying that you've had a lot of experience with Chuladasa
Uh huh.
and that you've made a lot of progress talking to me, both with Chuladasa's additional things about it, as well as the deeper Dhamma.
Yeah.
If you'll do that kind of a testimonial and then put my email address, that would be good.
Yeah. No, that sounds good. I don't have a working computer right now, which is why I'm on the phone. But when I get to work, I can do that.
All right.
Remember, it crashed when I was Skyping with you last time, and it never recovered. Not last time, the time before last time.
Okay.
But one's in the mail. Hopefully, it'll be here in a few days.
All right. Well, let's draw this to a close because we've gotten quite a lot done today. Make your list, and then every time the alarm goes off, you go through that little checklist of things to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Spectacles, testicles, watch and wallet, among other things.
Yeah, I've got four of them now.
All righty. Well, we'll see you, Dan.
All right.
See you next week.
Sounds good. Bye-bye.